Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started. And the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. I'm thrilled today to introduce you to Mari Smith. And Mari is one of the foremost experts on Facebook and is often referred to as the Queen of Facebook. She's been named one of 7 women shaping digital marketing by IBM and one of the top 10 social media power influencers many years in a row. She has shared stages with no less than Eckhart Tolle, Sir Richard Branson, Tony Robbins and Arianna Huffington. And quite frankly, I'm gobsmacked that she's agreed to come on my podcast today. So Mari, welcome. It is wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This is a bit unusual for me because I'm so used to getting on marketing podcasts and talking about nothing but Facebook and the family of apps. And I thought this would be a fun opportunity to lean into a totally different topic for me.
I know. We're going to talk about all sorts of different things and hopefully learn all about you and probably not talk about Facebook very much.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
So first off, I've experienced your unbridled positivity. I have to say, it's quite infectious. And I've read that you attribute much of your success to being an optimist. So where does that come from?
Oh gosh, what a great question. You know, in many ways, being born a Leo with a sunny disposition, my mom's actually a Leo as well. And my mom always has this thing she would say that in her CV, her resume, or her reference letters over the years, that there was always one word that would stand out that people would say that she's cheery. And she loved to be referred to as cheery. And so I think in many ways I don't know, maybe being a Leo, but I just, even the troubles that she personally had to go through herself, there was always that cheeriness. And so I strive. Sometimes though, in my adulthood, over the decades, I have found myself like really striving to maintain that positivity and be mindful of what I'm putting into my brain and my heart and my soul and my spirit, who I'm surrounding myself with, trying to be mindful of like not consuming too much news in this, past 2020. It's been probably I've consumed more mainstream news in the last 9 months than I had in the previous, several decades, just to kind of stay on top of what was happening. But at the same time, sometimes, and many of your listeners can probably relate, that it can be easy to get depressed, to get down, to get really in a funk when we immerse ourselves in the mainstream news and also just in the social media news feeds and seeing all kinds of, a lot of division in this country here in the US, but then to kind of take back control of your own time and attention. And I like to go, okay, well, what is working in my life right now? What are all of the things that I can be so grateful for? And I'm like, okay, well, I can't travel. I haven't been on a plane since early March 2020. And then I'm like, but thank goodness for this virtual technology. My family, we're now doing monthly Zooms, and it's a process. We never, there's parts of my family, quite a big family, and some of us are closer than others, but we've had this monthly Zoom connection that it just feeds my heart and my soul. I'm like, yay, look at that. We created a new connection, a new way of relating. And I think that probably many, many listeners all over the world, whether on a personal or business or otherwise, that we're like, whoa, yeah, we got this technology, and look at this new way that we're able to embrace that technology and to just maintain that positive outlook.
But there's a real difference, isn't there, I think, between certainly the UK and the West Coast of America, which is where you are now, isn't it? West Coast, because I've lived in the States, and there's a real difference in that positivity, isn't there, between America and the UK. Has that been your experience?
Yes. It's funny because I cast my mind back. So, and I was born in Canada. Both parents are fully Scottish. Dad was born in Edinburgh, mom in Dumbarton, and then they met and married in Canada, had their family there. And then they divorced in 1978 when I was 12, and Dad got custody of the 5 girls and took us all back to Edinburgh, his hometown, and we'd only been, me and my 4 sisters, and we'd only been briefly for a vacation, but then when we moved back, it was even because I'd spent the first 12 years of my life in Canada, albeit a very, very remote part, and wasn't really like socialized to be, a Canadian, I was much more Scottish because of my dad's influence primarily. But yeah, when I moved to the States in 1999, it was dramatically different. I could feel it because the previous several years I'd been really struggling to find my groove in Scotland and Edinburgh, and I had various careers, and I'd always been an employee. I left school really young, went right into the workforce, couldn't wait to make my own money. My dad was always struggling financially, and I'm like, I got to make my own money. And so, but even so, I still really kind of struggled. And to find my groove, as I say, in my career, it was sales, marketing, and training, and teaching, and speaking, and then I was actually working at a temp agency. I was a legal secretary for many, many years in my late teens and pretty much all of my 20s, in a variety of different ways. And I remember I was starting a business. I just got in 1998, early 98, I'd gone to, I forget the name of whatever program it was, but I think it was like a government-funded program that you could go learn how to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to start a speaking and training and personal development and professional development, focused primarily on lawyers because that's the industry I knew. And I remember going into kind of like back at the day, really dating myself, the typing pool where it's like all of us ladies were, doing the audio typing. And I was like thinking about this whole new life for myself and this whole new business. And I remember one of my friends, and she kind of pointed out to the rest of my colleagues, Mari's, she's not a secretary. She's an entrepreneur. She's going to, you watch, she's going to go places. And I'm like, yes, thanks for believing in me. But it's almost as if the UK culture was like, hey, don't get too big for your britches. And who do you think you are? And no, you can't believe in us and going off and starting your own business, being an entrepreneur. And I moved to America and they're like, everybody's an entrepreneur. Now, not everybody, of course, but Southern California, for sure, it's like the mecca of personal development, professional development. Everybody's taking courses, teaching courses, battering themselves, starting their own businesses. And I'm like, yay, I'm home.
It is massively different, isn't it? And
yeah.
It's just, it's so interesting to hear your journey. So I was going to ask, I know that you were born in Canada,
yeah.
and you've already filled in some gaps. That's wonderful. But
Yeah.
I'd love to know, apart from positivity, what are the biggest similarities and differences that you've noticed between those 3 places? So Canada, Scotland, and San Diego, where you are now.
Gosh, well, there is definitely a lot of similarities between Canada and America, and depending on different places. And I have traveled significantly as a public speaker, and pre-COVID, of course, but we'll get back there. And, like for me, East Coast, New York, I like to visit New York very, very briefly. I can only tolerate it for extremely short periods of time. It is an intense energy. And if I was like speaking in like downtown New York City, and I'm staying in a hotel and it's super fancy, but it's tiny, and these are old buildings and they're tiny, tiny little hotel rooms, even super high end, and you just constant noise all the time, and the hustle and the bustle, and I just, for this kind of quiet, peace-loving, rural BC Canada, raised in a Quaker community. My dad was always a practicing Quaker. It's just too intense for me. And so then there's other parts like, Boston. I do like Boston. That's very pretty, and I like the energy there. But I've always enjoyed the West Coast. I do like Oregon, and Arizona gets a bit too hot for me. But Canada, I do remember very distinctly as a child the seasons, right? So I had like severe winters. One year, I remember my dad made us an igloo. We had so much snow, and he made us like a snow house. It was really fun. And but then the East Coast, where I was born on the East Coast, and then when I was 2, moved over to the rural BC. I don't have any memories really of the East Coast, but I do know that their winters can be much more severe in Toronto. So I'm very blessed down here, weather-wise in Southern California. The coldest it gets, it's, I forget the Celsius, but like maybe 60s Fahrenheit. But culturally, people-wise, there absolutely is in the UK. There is that. There is that. It's cold here this morning, so I'm making my nose run. There's definitely that stiff upper lip, that more reserved, that more kind of emotionally guarded. And a little bit less expressive, either vocally or even physically, like hugging people. Over here, like everybody hugs, again, pre-COVID, of course, but you meet someone that's just automatic, they hug, and they're like very demonstrative with their feelings, or like just processing. There's a thing here where it's like everybody, like, not everybody, again, generalizing, but if there's something on your mind or your heart troubling you in a relationship, friendship, you're going to bring it up, you're going to talk it through, you're going to process it. But in the UK, generally speaking, you might be more inclined to just kind of like, bottle it up, or just not, maybe share it with a close personal friend, but not necessarily like confront this, like. And again, I haven't lived there for 20 years. It was probably, and I've visited, of course, and I've still got family there, but just the differences that for me personally, I've been aware of.
Is there anything you miss?
Oh, it's interesting, Rachel, because I think COVID has caused, probably, I'm looking over here at my year-at-a-glance calendar, COVID has caused so many of us worldwide, I believe, to really closely examine life and the meaning of life and priorities and values, and get back to the simple, finer things in life that really money can't buy, which is generally speaking going to be experiences with loved ones. And so family, close friends, getting together with, people that really mean something to you. And that's, we can only do so much virtually. We were talking about that earlier. Yes, the Zooms can kind of fill a bit of that longing. But I miss the travel part of it and being able to come over to Scotland, usually about once or twice a year. It would vary. I would always manage to time my visits to the UK with a speaking engagement, so I get my flight covered, my expenses, and it was always very fortuitous that I could weave in some time with family. Now, so that would be an aspect of it. Definitely miss. Like I became a great aunt a year ago, December. My niece had a beautiful baby girl, and so we connect, and we virtually. But and I did meet her in February. Was the last time I was in Scotland of 2020. But I would say predominantly family. Then, you know what, Rachel? It's interesting because the times I'm just thinking back into all the times I've been back. Like I say, almost once a year for 20 years. 99. 2020, it's coming up 22 years, my 22nd anniversary coming up in mid-January, that anytime ever I set foot on that Scottish soil, I feel the genetic, the DNA, like the bagpipes, the tartan. I always joke about having tartan blood. It's like you can take the girl out of Scotland, but you can't take Scotland out of the girl. And I just feel an immense patriotism and just a devotion to my kindred folk in Scotland and the UK in general, for sure. Great Britain, of course, England, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and Wales, but particularly Scotland. So.
And what do you think of the way we're messing it all up now for the Scots?
Well, it's fascinating because what I found with the referendum, when was that now? Was that 2016? Whenever was the independence, and I remember my family, so I have 2 younger sisters, and then each of them have 2 kids, and then their spouses. They all pro-independence, all voting for Scotland to have its independence. And then us folks who are on the other side of the pond, I got an older sister in northern Ottawa, and my mom's still in BC. I have an whole adopted family in Vancouver Island. But all of us over here were like, no, aren't they better united? They should stay together. But I can see both sides. I can see both sides in terms of independence. And then the whole Brexit thing. I pay as much attention as I can to all of that, and it is really fascinating. And my partner, Christopher, and I, we kind of joke about it. He's full-on American, born in L.A., and he has Irish roots, and part of them anyway. But then he's like, wonder if Scotland had a second referendum, they get out of the UK, and then they get back into the EU. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
I think it's a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, but I mean, it worries me greatly that this foolhardy thing that we're doing will probably or may well lead to the breakup of the United Kingdom. There won't be any United Kingdom, and that to me is just so sad. It really.
Yeah.
But who knows? Who knows what will happen?
Yeah, it's just we're creating this whole unprecedented experience in the last, certainly 1 year, but really maybe the last several years, and a lot of change. And it's wonderful, just real quick sidebar on that. I actually really love to stand back and take a kind of a much bigger view of humanity. And this might be a little woo-woo for some of your listeners, but I know they don't mind it. There's a great documentary actually on YouTube. It's just called The Great Year. And it was made a little while ago, and it talks about the Earth's 24,000-year cycles. If you think about a clock, there's 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, that we are only just starting to come back up in the ascension phase and becoming a bit more enlightened. And I was so depressed after watching that documentary because I thought, wait, what? There's been a time in humanity's existence that we're way more enlightened than we are now. I always thought that we're on this trajectory of getting more conscious and more enlightened, but it's like, no, we're just coming out of the darkest times. And so when you think of this, we've been through 12,000 years of descension, now we're starting back on the 12,000 of ascension, and it gives me hope. And it's okay, phew, that makes a little bit more sense to me in terms of all the stuff that's been going on. And I actually follow a wonderful British English astrologer called Pam Gregory, pamgregory.com. I watch her YouTube videos, and she's talking about all this planetary shifts and whatnot, and coming into 2021 and all these portals. And I just was like, yay, I love getting inspired from a much bigger picture, because sometimes us humans get really caught up in our narrow kind of focus.
I love that, and it makes me think of the U-curve of happiness, that midlife is when we're right at the bottom of the U-curve, and yet we're on an upwards trajectory, and it gets better and better as we get older and older, and if that is what's going to happen to the world as well, I will buy into that. I think that sounds like a fabulous idea. We have to grab onto whatever we can at the moment, don't we? Because it's just otherwise it's whoa, just too much.
Yeah, and to really be deliberate in your creation. We're talking earlier about the positivity aspect, and I attribute a lot of that to just being conscious about the thoughts, because what is it they say, something like 64,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of them are just recycled thoughts. They're not even new original thoughts, and we keep recreating our same reality because we're creating it from our past thoughts. And some of your listeners might be familiar with the work of Dr. Jo Dispenza, and I just love how he talks about going out there into the future in your mind's eye, in your visioning, in your meditations, and okay, what do I really want to create? What do I want to manifest? What do I want to deliberately create my reality in all aspects of life, and just will yourself to be keeping that vision in mind, as opposed to just continually creating the same old, and it's he says even simple things like when you wake up in the morning, get out of bed on the other side, brush your teeth with the opposite hand, make yourself do things differently to just shake it up a bit.
So has that helped you get to where you are? Because, you've had this sort of quite remarkable life, and to be where you are now, doing what you do now, has that been a big part of that process to get to where you are now?
aspect. It's definitely an evolution. It's a journey. When I first got invited to come out to San Diego, it was late 98. I was flat broke. I did not have a dime to my name. I was actually living with my dad again. I'd like moved back home. I was 32 at the time, and I moved back. Dad, I need a place to stay again. I was like between whatever living situations, and my dad was always like, "My door's open." And all of us sisters have done that over the years. But I mentioned earlier about like taking an entrepreneurial class and wanting to start my own business. And I had just begun to get things going. I had a website. It's called Dynamic Speaking. I had business cards and brochures. And I literally started to get some clients. And my dad was really believing in me, encouraging me, and championing me. He'd always been an entrepreneur. My dad rarely ever was an employee. He was a baker all of his life, a master professional baker, and ran a little bakery in BC. And so he was all for, being an entrepreneur. But it was right when I was walking into my local bank in Edinburgh, and I had a meeting with the business manager to get a small loan, a small business startup loan. And that's when I got the invitation to come to San Diego, California. And I just knew the gods were speaking to me and going, "Hey, woohoo, you're not supposed to start this business here in Scotland. Come on over here to California." And I was like a long lost friend. And he's like, "Come on over, I'll get your ticket." And he'd married a girl that was here, a lady that was here in San Diego. And so they were very gracious in bringing me out here. But the journey part of it, I remember when I was working as a temp in 97, and I came across the book called The Celestine Prophecy. And then there's a companion book that's called The Experiential Guide to the Celestine Prophecy by Adrienne, as James Redfield is the author of that. They made it into a movie, actually, The Celestine Prophecy. And he was talking about the energy and the energetic field, and of course the chakras and all these things, all this like wonderful woo-woo stuff. And I was reading like Deepak Chopra and Louise Hay, and I had all these books on my shelf. And I got the invite to come to San Diego. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, Deepak Chopra, I'm sure he's based at Louise Hay, Jack Canfield, Tony Robbins. These are going to be my neighbors. but back to just two things real quick that to answer your question. I distinctly remember like really embracing this body of work, the Celestine Prophecy. And I was sitting in Princess Street Gardens, beautiful area with the castle there, of course, on my lunch break. And James Redfield talks about when you look at a tree, if you just soften your gaze and you can see the vibration, you can see the energetic field around the tree. And I remember doing this and going, wow, like there's something here, there's something magical, there's this field. And I'd be like walking along the street and there's like kind of smiling to myself. And I remember coming back to the lawyer's office and one of my colleagues was like, "Mari, I saw you out on your lunch break and you're like just smiling away to yourself. Why are you always happy?" Because it's this law of attraction that you want to be able to radiate a genuine sense of happiness. But at the same time, there were aspects. I wasn't like that 24/7. I'm still not. I'm not like that 24/7. I'm absolutely human like everybody. I have my moments. I was real funny yesterday. I was in such a funk. I could not shake this funk off. And I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm going to bake some chocolate chip muffins and I'm going to eat 4 of them. And I did. And I gave myself full permission. And I went to bed going, yay, I feel much better. And I don't encourage people to eat, but I had done everything. I was using essential oils. I was like meditating. I journaled. I'm like, what is with this funk? I tried everything to lift it. Talked to a friend. I'm like, okay, that's it. Chocolate muffins. It's the only thing that's going to lift it. But the second thing I was going to say about that, it was Adrienne, because I remember getting the tapes, the audio cassettes. I remember her saying there was a moment in her life where she was trying to get things to happen, and she was just so frustrated. And she stood in the middle of her room, and I can still get the goosebumps when I think of it. And she just screamed at the top of her lungs, "Get me out of here!" And she's like, not within 1 hour, the phone rang, and stuff started to shift, and people were like helping her and moving her forward in this new life and this career she wanted to create. And I remember having a moment like that not long before I got that invite to come to San Diego. Here I am living in my dad's house, like I say, flat broke, doing this temporary job, wanting to start a whole new career as an entrepreneur. And I'm in this small little room that my dad let me have. And, not like it was a huge house, and I stood there and I was so frustrated, and I did that, get me out of here. It was like, a few months later, I'm on a plane with a couple of suitcases and 50 pounds to my name heading to San Diego, and I'm like, oh, it worked.
Wow, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Good for you for trusting it, for following it, for going with it.
Yeah.
Because that takes a lot of courage to do that. It's not, to cross the world, basically. And you went almost as far as you could go in a way, didn't you? Coming all the way to the west coast of America.
I did, and I've later found that if you want to change your karma, change your destiny, you can change your name or change your location. And I did both because my name is the Gaelic spelling, Mairi, and I had already in Scotland, I'd already started spelling it without the middle I. It's a silent I. It's pronounced the exact same way. It's Gaelic for Mary. But when I came over here, nobody could pronounce it. I get all these strange Mairi. They try to pronounce the middle I, and I'm like, that's it. I'm just going to not spell my name the original way. So I changed my name and changed my location, and it literally can change the trajectory of your life. And I've recently actually started, I had a session not long ago with, he's called a locational astrologer, and it's called astrocartology, I think it's astrocartology, yeah. And it's like finding the exact kind of coordinates of locations where it would be best for you to manifest your ideal life of what you want to create. So I'm positive that a big part of that happened when I came to San Diego in 99. And then I'm actually kind of toying with a move. I really thought, I haven't really shared this with that many people, but I'll share it with you on your podcast. I told my family now, because now that I've had this reading with this locational astrologer, I really thought since COVID, I'm like, and also my dad passed. It was a big part of it. My dad passed in mid-February, right before COVID. I managed to go over and lay him to rest. And it was long expected. He'd been ill for a while with Alzheimer's, and he was there in Dunfermline in a care home. And so just things really shifted for me. When you start, when you lose a parent, the first one to go, and just re-examine life and go, oh, okay, I'm the next generation. I better make sure I'm living my right life. And I really thought, and then also I mentioned with my niece having a daughter and becoming a great aunt, I'm like, I got to go back to Scotland. I'm going to re-emigrate. I'm just going to pack up and go. No, maybe not. I should just probably go for, a couple of months and see if it's going to be a fit. And I'm like, it's torturing me day and night. And then Christopher's like, I told you about this guy, Julian Lee. You got to have a session with him. I'm like, okay. And I did. And he was like, okay, I won't give you all the details, but Scotland was not going to be a good match for me for where I want to take my life next. So that's not on the cards. I'll definitely keep coming and visiting when it's safe to do so again. But I'm going to be staying in the States. So
you're going to tell us where you're going to go?
Not yet, because it's not. There's a possibility it's going to be the West Coast. So there was a possibility. The locational astrologer Julian, he actually found 3. He says, "Mari, this is so rare. This is so rare. Sometimes I have to give people their money back. I can't even find one location." He's like, "I found 3 for you," and one of them was the East Coast. It was kind of New England area, and I'm like, I'm just not an East Coast gal. Don't even tell me about that, because I just know I'm not going to go. So, but there's a couple of choices. One still in California. But we'll see. I thought, and we looked at Canada too, and so West Coast. So, yeah,
it's exciting.
Fun. Yeah, it is.
And in this day and age, we can be anywhere we like, can't we?
It's so true.
You can do what you do anywhere, I presume.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And I think I've spoken to so many of my fellow, consultants and thought leaders and public speakers, and some people, unfortunately, their business has really been decimated, and they've had to pivot. So it's like one of the words of the year for 2020 for sure is like pivot. Everybody's got to learn how to pivot. And I feel so blessed, so fortunate to have already long established the digital aspect of my business, and to be able to teach courses and do live streaming and do webinars. What I found in 2020 was really amazing. Like all of the in-person events just got canceled, postponed, or pivoted to streaming, to virtual, of course. But also what I saw is a big uptick in brands, organizations deciding this was the time for them to start offering educational content in a webinar format. So like AT&T, Verizon, it's like these big brands coming forward and booking like series of webinars with me. And I'm like, well, this is cool. It's really, really love doing that kind of work anyway.
Yeah, it's really accelerated the move to doing stuff online and doing everything online, isn't it, really?
It really has. I kind of wish I'd bought some Zoom stock in the very beginning.
I did!
Good for you.
But not enough.
Yeah, I know,
I have to say, not enough. I was like, silly me. Should have put all my savings into that.
Yeah, that. And what was the other one? Was a couple other like gear companies, camera companies, digital streaming. Yeah. And of course, Facebook. I do still have quite a chunk of Facebook and Apple. They're going to keep cranking out good returns.
So, just changing tack slightly.
Yeah.
You and I are. We talked about it. We're almost the same age, aren't we? And I think I'm a little bit older than you, just slightly.
Like weeks.
Like 6 weeks or something. 6 weeks older.
Born the same year.
Which is very funny. You're an older woman who is a huge success in an industry which is very male and very youth focused. Mm-hmm. So what have you done? What is your secret to remaining not only high profile but also relevant?
Well, I like to think of myself as mature versus older.
All right.
And
I'll let you have that.
I think a lot of it is like your own relationship to yourself. And I'm sure you can concur, Rachel, where as the years kind of roll by, the self-knowledge, ideally for most people, becomes deeper. And that you just know yourself. You just know, I'm not ever going to do that thing over there. Or, I have a real deep sense of curiosity, so I'm going to try this thing over here. Now, I've known for most all of my life, I have two parallel loves, and that is my love of technology and my love of people. And I remember being 12 years old in Scotland. My dad had bought an old Sinclair, or whatever the heck they were called, C5 or something, those computers with the big deep monitors, tiny little black and white monitor, and the keyboard had a cassette drive in the side of it. Like really dating myself. This is like 1979 or something, 78. And my dad was also a musician. He wrote music. And I remember taking his music and making a little computer program so that his 5-part harmony would play. And then I was like making this little hangman game thing. And so I just always loved tinkering around with tech. And of course, in the mid to late 90s, when the internet really started to come up in widely, I just was like fascinated by the internet. And so I think there's just like this inherent love, as well as my natural curiosity, that I love tech and I like to tinker around and press buttons and figure out how things work. But then I also have this aspect on the DISC, which is you got Myers-Briggs, you've got DISC. I love these personality assessments. I'm an ENFJ, sometimes ESFJ, but and then the DISC, it's called a high I, which is an extrovert, a people person, a natural people person. But then then I'm also this aspect where I'm like steeped in this Quaker roots, which a big part of it is equality and inclusion and humility, and being able to see the divinity in everybody. And I would say to people, I'd go up to people, or people come up to me at events over the years, and some people would be like, "Oh my gosh, Mari Smith," and I'm like, oh no, don't be putting me on a pedestal. I think that in my mind, right? And I just relate with them, I connect with them, I make them feel good. My goal was always have people feel good, feel better about themselves having interacted with me. And so I think all of these things I'm sharing with you kind of transcend whatever career or industry I'm in. At the same time, with having that love of the people and technology, that's what social media is. And so I feel like in many ways very natural at it. I also just love marketing, and I love to come up with really creative ways to do what's really called relationship marketing, and that's the book that I wrote 10 years ago now, and that I love to demonstrate and model for people, like, here's an authentic, natural way of connecting with people, and it's not about getting those vanity metrics, which is the public facing, I'm all that, let me go buy some followers to show the world how great I am. No, that's total BS. It's like, I would rather people quietly generated a solid income behind the scenes and had hardly anything to show for it necessarily in the beginning, and people just get sold into or bought into this idea that we have to have these big numbers. And then the relevance thing, Rachel, is just really, I love keeping my finger on the pulse. My friend Mike Stelzner, the founder of Social Media Examiner, he's always like, oh, Mari's really good at reading the tea leaves. So, what's happening with Facebook? Okay, let's read the tea leaves, and I'm going to tell you what the writing on the wall and predict what's going to be happening and where you should be focused as a business person.
Wow, that's great. I love that.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I think that understanding of ourselves, I think, is something that comes as we get more mature, isn't it? And that authenticity. And it seems to me that you've embraced that authenticity for a long time, perhaps longer than a lot of other women who maybe discover it more in midlife. Certainly I wasn't authentic when I was younger. I wasn't authentically me at all.
Well, I hear what you're saying. To add to that, I would say to me it was infinitely more important what other people thought about me in my younger years. I still struggle with that at times. I'm not kidding. I definitely do, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate. And social media can feed into that. I think it's really important for people to watch the documentary The Social Dilemma. I've seen it twice now. It is troublesome to me, but at the same time, troublesome insofar as, yes, these technologies are psychologically designed to create addictive behavior, to manipulate our thoughts and feelings and behaviors. At the same time, we are in control. We do not have to completely just spend hours of mindless time surfing through these feeds. You can put all kinds of measures in place and put your phone in quiet mode and apps in quiet mode. But the reason I'm bringing that up in the social dilemma and because it's like this social proof, it's like if you have a part of you, which maybe we all have, I don't know, I'm totally admitting that I do, that I do have an aspect that cares what other people think of me. And I really, really respect, admire human beings, male or female, at all ages, that can go, I do not care. Like, they generally don't have any, two hoots about what other people think about it. Like, I'm striving to get there, right? I've gotten a lot better over the decades. But the social media aspect of it is where you go to make a post on your personal profile, your Instagram, wherever it might be. And because of the algorithms at the time of day or week or whatever it's happening, it doesn't get a lot of response. And I've seen myself go, oh my God, I guess nobody likes this piece of content here. But then the part where to be careful is to not take, oh, woe is me, nobody likes me kind of thing. You're at the mercy of these algorithms. So just be careful of doing what I call comparing the inside of yourself with the outside of others, because that's what happens when we scroll through mindlessly of these news feeds, whatever platform, as we're seeing a semi-polished version of other people's lives. And then we're going, oh my gosh, look at that Janet over there. Look at James or Mary or whoever it might be. Oh, they've just got this amazing life. Oh, they've got it all together. They've got the perfect family, the perfect man. No, you don't know that. They might be dying inside. They might be having this is all just a perfectly photoshopped presentation that they're putting out to the world. Everybody's got their struggles. So having some compassion and empathy and being able to kind of read between the lines. But I'm sorry if I got off track. I forget if you'd asked me a question now.
No, that's all very good, and it actually leads on to another question I was going to ask you, because I've noticed that a lot of women our age are coming off Facebook, and as well as the younger folks. So how do you think Facebook will evolve as its audience changes, and is it still relevant for midlife women?
Yeah, great question. Since Facebook really started in 2004, but then to the public in 2006. So what's that's been 14 years, it'll be 15 years next year. It's become an ingrained daily habit, like brushing your teeth, having a shower, whatever, stuff that you do every day. And especially for the older generation. Like my mom lives on Facebook. She's in her late 70s, and she, connects with her whole family and friends, and she loves her games and her Words with Friends and stuff like that. And it's really fun. It's fun to watch that generation, and then our generation and the younger generations. And it's like, if women our age or younger or older are choosing to maybe either reduce their time on Facebook or move off altogether, there are bound to be other ways that they're leaning into to connect with family, with loved ones, because that's the primary purpose. It's not like, people are over there and thinking that it's going to be mostly all business or just looking to network and make new friends. At the same time, I often say to people, there were ways for us to connect with family long before Facebook came along. So if something happened to them tomorrow, it's like, not like it will, but there'll be other ways. There's mobile apps, there's phone calls, there's all the Zooms and virtual technologies and so on and so forth. But I do think that the algorithms have changed significantly on Facebook, certainly over the years, but I have noticed a big difference in 2020. I mean, significant difference. And I think Facebook has really been kind of doubling down on certain aspects of their AI coming up to the US election, and that's behind us now. And so it's like, for instance, I have noticed significantly on my personal profile, the posts that I make there are getting way, way less reach and engagement than a few years ago. And that could be representative of exactly what you just brought up there, where people are spending less time on the site. And the younger ones, Facebook has this whole department called NPE. It's called New Product Experimentation. And that department they're tasked with doing nothing but coming up with innovative, creative new apps, new products, new features, and throwing them out there and testing them and seeing what works. And they have got a rigorous eye on all the competition. Of course, TikTok being one of the biggest ones for the younger eyeballs. YouTube being the biggest one when it comes to video. Just looking to innovate or directly copy like they do. The stories feature, Instagram copied directly from Snapchat, and now every app has a stories feature.
And have you experienced any ageism and sexism as you've gone through your career?
Well, ageism, probably not. And I just, maybe it's funny because I was thinking about our interview coming up this morning, and I was like, I thought, people might think I'm in denial. You can call it denial if you want, but I relate to myself like I'm still somewhere between 20 and 40, and I just don't think of myself in my 50s. People can find my age. You just Google me, my age is right there. But for the longest time, probably the last 10 years, I have been very guarded about my age. And like people to know my age, because I like to be kind of like ageless. And my 40th birthday was actually my absolute favorite. I had an amazing birthday party. I was married at the time. I got divorced when I was 45, I think. And I just was like, okay, that's it. I'm never going to age. I'm just going to stay 40 forever. So there's this aspect, and I like to be a little goofy at times too, and playful and just silly, and just like not take myself too seriously at times. So the ageism, probably not, but the sexism, I would say, you mentioned earlier, Rachel, about the social media, digital marketing, online marketing world being very male dominated. And I have seen myself being invited to speak to events where I'm kind of like the token female. Or, where you can see events, and I won't name names, but you can see where events are like, it's like all male headliners and, maybe one or two women. And I'm proud to take one for the team. And I stand tall and strong and deliver like my best keynote ever, and research the audience and go above and beyond and do an amazing job. Not like I feel like I have to try harder, but that's how I do anything. I mean, I strive for excellence, and I would definitely like to see more women coming forward and stepping up into the leadership and speaking. And I see there's a lot of female Facebook experts, run agencies, do have like focus on Facebook ads and the like. So, I think it's roughly, generally speaking, a somewhat level playing field when it comes to, having a business, establishing yourself as an expert in social media marketing. Certainly, the social media marketers in terms of it's back to this aspect of relationships. And women, generally speaking, the feminine aspect of human beings tends to be a little more relational oriented than transactional oriented anyway.
And I guess you have built up such a body of expertise, and you are consistently out there expressing that anybody that tries to marginalise you in any shape or form, I would imagine would get quite short shrift, wouldn't they?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, consistent. You mentioned the key word there, and that is it. It's like consistency. It builds trust. I mean, you just keep showing up. You be yourself. You mentioned the word authentic. That's it. You got to be authentic. You got to be consistent, and qualities that I really embody or strive to embody is that humility, definitely one of them, and but also compassion and empathy and having a deep understanding for people's troubles and not making assumptions. I think us human beings can be very quick to read something and just make an assumption about a person or a situation, and we just don't know. We don't know the truth for sure of what's going on with that person or that business or that situation, and to try to have compassion, but also to have boundaries. I think it's so important to have boundaries. It's not like you're just going to have people can do what they want. Let's have compassion and boundaries. I run a very successful Facebook group with like 15,000 members, and we've built it up over the years. We have a really tight culture in there. And just the other week there's somebody had posted in there looking to find suggestions for who offers a paid Facebook ad courses. Now, I don't really super go deep into Facebook ads. I don't really specialize in just Facebook ads. I do more like organic and strategy and content marketing, relationship marketing, brand ambassador, influencer marketing, the kind of like everything but paid. But I include paid in my courses. I don't just focus on paid. So anyway, I saw all these comments in there, and some people started posting their affiliate links, and I'm like, that is a big no-no. And then I saw some discomfort coming out where people were like, wait, isn't Mari a Facebook expert? Why is she letting all these people put her competitors in here? And so what I did, Rachel, I think this is a really powerful takeaway for your listeners that I wish more companies and brands would do, is you get on video. There's no amount of sophisticated technology that will take the place of live and in person, but the next best thing is no question video. And this year, 2020, has absolutely underscored that. So I'm like, okay. Really gave it some good thought, talked it through with my partner, Christopher, and I'm like, okay, and I wanted to talk everybody up and say, hey, we're setting new standards. We're raising the bar. We're setting the tone of how social media marketing and how Facebook groups are run, and we have inclusive, but we also have boundaries. And so, hey, if you want to share an affiliate link periodically in a comment, no, you can't just post it and the group will delete it. But occasionally, if it makes sense, you put it as a comment, then you must disclose. It's etiquette and it's FTC rules. All right? And I'm like saying to them, I have a zero tolerance policy for shenanigans. There will be no shenanigans in this group. So I'm making a point about having boundaries is so important.
Well, before we wrap up, and it's been an absolute delight talking to you today, I'd love to know, is there anything else you would really like the world to know, my listeners to know? Is there a big lesson that you've learned or something that you really would like to impart?
I think I just really want to circle back to that, the topic of self-knowledge that we're talking about. And there's a part of me that's wanting to come forward in this next kind of phase of my life to be more self-expressed. I'm very creative. I'm a natural artist. I actually have an easel, beautiful easel and canvas and paints are all waiting for me for the last couple of months to get going with my artistic pursuits in another part of my house. I'm very musical as well. And so those are aspects of my self-expression on a more personal side. And there's also like there's like a whole other body of work that I know wants to come forward. And there's aspects of it that's to do with personal development, professional development, transformation. I'm actually a member of a couple of transformational organizations here in the U.S. One of them is Jack Canfield's TLC, Transformational Leadership Council. And so I want to kind of go forward into the world in the next several years, continuing doing what I'm doing, maintaining my position, if you will, my role in the social media industry, and then broadening out to have people know, hey, there's much more to Mari than just Facebook. So my advice and my kind of teachable point of view in that what I just said is to really, know thyself and to not be afraid of bringing forward, even if it does cause some fear in you. You feel the fear and you do it anyway, right? It's that great book by Susan Jeffers. It's like, okay, I'm terrified, but you know what? I'm going to go for it anyway. Because what's the worst that could happen? Oh my gosh, I tried it. It didn't really work. Or, oh my gosh, I tried it and it was an amazing success. And so to just lean into that still small voice that keeps saying, hey, have you tried this? Or no, I think you really want to do that. There's a wonderful, wonderful book called Let Your Life Speak. Let Your Life Speak by Parker. I'm spacing his name in a second, but he's actually a Quaker. And it's a beautiful book. And the funniest thing I'll leave your readers with is somebody gave me that book in 2013, and I never read it. And it was sitting on my bookshelf. And all of a sudden, something started happening. It just chokes me up. I think my dad was speaking to me. It was after my dad passed. And I just felt that book calling to me. And I'm like, I got to find that. I couldn't find it. And then one night, it was like 11 o'clock at night. I was like, okay, bedtime, all right. And I'm like, no, I got to clean my bookshelf out. I'm like, what? That's just like, you don't get to clean your bookshelf at 11 o'clock at night. No, I got to clean it out. It was like, do. Like, got hundreds and hundreds of books. I'm like, there's that book. Let Your Life Speak. Oh, I got to read it now. And I did. I read it from cover to cover, and I went and looked up the guy that had given me the book, and I reached out to him. I'm like, you might not remember this, but you gave me a book 13 years ago, whatever it was, 17 years ago. Let Your Life Speak. Parker Palmer. I knew it was, Parker Palmer. Listening for the Voice of Vocation. That is the subtext. Listening for the Voice of Vocation. It's a beautiful book that I highly recommend.
Well, that's just wonderful. Thank you. So we should all go and read this book, definitely, I think.
Yes. Let your life speak. And it is. It's just about trusting those still small moments. And he talks about way opening. The Quakers have this thing they talk about. You just hold space for someone to let their inner knowing come forward, come out, to be expressed. And the way will open. Like, when I got invited to come to San Diego, that was way opening. But what Parker Palmer talks about in this book is just a small little book. He talks about sometimes there's way closing. Sometimes you're trying to get something to work, and it just won't work. But it's because that's supposed to close so that something else can open. So, listening. The universe is always talking to us.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share it, and leave me a review wherever you're listening. It really helps me get the message out. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you'll find strategies, support, and resources to help make your midlife magnificent. Get clarity on how to make the most of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.